In the quiet corners of our world, where shadows stretch and secrets lie dormant, some stories are waiting to erupt. Meet Daniel, a man who has perfected the art of invisibility. He lives a life painted in shades of gray, a quiet observer content to exist on the fringes. His days are a predictable rhythm of solitude and routine, a fortress he's built to keep the world, and his own past, at bay. But even the most carefully constructed walls can crumble. Now, meet Alina. She's a whirlwind of charisma and mystery, a woman who walks into a room and commands it without saying a word. To the outside world, she's a success story, an artist whose work captivates the elite. But beneath the polished surface is a past wrapped in danger, a history she has fought tooth and nail to escape. She carries her secrets like a second skin, a constant reminder of a life she swore she'd left behind. She believes she's safe, that her old life is a ghost she has outrun. She is wrong. Their worlds were never supposed to intersect. Daniel, the man in the shadows, and Alina, the woman running from them. But fate, as it often does, has a cruel sense of humor. A chance encounter, a fleeting moment of shared vulnerability, becomes a spark that ignites a long-dormant fuse. It starts with a misplaced photograph, a seemingly innocent object that holds the key to a secret neither of them knew they shared. A secret that was buried deep, a truth so explosive it was never meant to see the light of day. This isn't just a story about two people crossing paths. This is a collision course. As the photograph's true meaning begins to unravel, the quiet life Daniel cherished is shattered. The safe world Alina built begins to crack. They are pulled into a vortex of power plays and shifting loyalties, where old enemies resurface and trusted friends reveal their true colors. Every step they take deeper into the mystery is a step closer to a point of no return. The people they thought they could rely on become the ones they should fear the most. A powerful corporation, a shadowy figure from Alina's past, and a forgotten pact all converge, creating a web of betrayal so intricate that escape seems impossible. The lines between ally and enemy blur completely. Daniel, the man who wanted nothing more than to be left alone, must now become the one thing he never wanted to be, a player in a very dangerous game, and Alina must confront the very demon she spent a lifetime running from. This isn't your typical thriller. Forget the plot twists you think you can predict. What's coming is a revelation that redefines everything. It's a truth that doesn't just twist the story, it shatters it into a million pieces. The final act isn't just about survival. It's about confronting a reality that is far more terrifying than any lie. Are you ready to uncover the secret that connects them all? To find out more, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell, because you won't want to miss what happens next. Thanks for watching. A billionaire discovers a black waitress quietly coding in the restaurant's kitchen, only to realize she has solved the most critical issue his company has been battling. Imagine finding the answer to your greatest challenge right there in front of you, delivered with a polite smile along with your dinner. James Mitchell had no idea that a routine meeting at the garden terrace would completely shift his understanding of skill, opportunity, and where brilliance could hide. The 42-year-old tech founder sat in his regular corner booth, going over quarterly numbers with his board when something unusual caught his attention through the kitchen's service window. There, seemingly during her break, a young waitress leaned over a laptop, typing with a kind of driven focus James hadn't seen since his own long coding nights 2 decades earlier. But this wasn't someone casually scrolling or messaging friends. The intricate lines of code on her screen looked shockingly familiar, almost identical to the logistics challenge that had stumped his entire engineering division for months. When she glanced up and briefly met his eyes through the opening, something stirred within him. Extraordinary discoveries often appear in the most ordinary settings. Where are you tuning in from tonight? Zoe Washington had spent 3 years working double shifts at the garden terrace. In that time, she'd mastered the ability to make every customer feel like the star of the evening. At 36, she had a warm, inviting smile capable of lifting anyone's mood. But tonight felt different. The sting of yet another round of rejection emails from tech companies still weighed heavily on her mind. Each message reminded her that her computer science degree from a community college didn't hold the prestige of others. Still, she adored coding, even if it seemed no one in the industry cared. When the dinner chaos finally eased, Zoe slipped to her usual spot in the back corner of the kitchen and pulled out her weathered laptop. For weeks, she'd been working on something she believed could change how companies handle logistics and advanced supply chain optimization algorithm. The idea had grown from observing the nightly madness at the restaurant, how orders flowed, where bottlenecks occurred, and the pattern she instinctively recognized. Still glued to that computer, Zoe, Miguel, the head chef, asked as he wiped down his workstation. His voice was soft but edged with concern. You know, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. He smiled, continuing to type. I'm just working on something that could help businesses operate more efficiently. You've seen how hectic our dinner rush gets when we can't predict what tables we'll order. Miguel chuckled. Yeah, like trying to conduct a symphony when half the musicians wander in late. But imagine if we could forecast those patterns and adapt ahead of time. Her eyes shone as she gestured toward her monitor, which displayed rows of predictive algorithms and evolving data models. Meanwhile, James couldn't focus. His CFO continued talking about profit margins, but James's attention kept drifting to the kitchen. He had built Technova Solutions from nothing into a billion-dollar enterprise, yet their newest initiative had hit a dead end. For half a year, a team of MIT-trained engineers had attempted to solve a supply chain optimization issue for a major client, but the answer had remained just out of reach, bleeding money and delaying delivery. "James, are you with us?" Patricia, the board chair, asked sharply. "We need a decision on the Morrison account by Friday, or we're staring at a $20 million loss." "I understand," James replied, still glancing toward the kitchen. "But maybe our whole approach is wrong. Maybe we're trapped inside our own assumptions." When the dining room finally thinned out, James came up with an excuse to step away. Something about that waitress's intensity reminded him of who he'd once been coding until sunrise in his cramped college dorm. Powered only by caffeine and he'd always believed genius could arise anywhere, yet somewhere during his rise he had fallen into the same hiring patterns as everyone else. Tonight felt like a wake-up call that inspiration often emerges in the places no one bothers to look. The service window offered a clear view of Zoe's laptop, and when James saw the elegant mathematical patterns scrolling across her screen, his breath hitched. Her method was astonishing. She was addressing a problem nearly identical to Technova's, yet approaching it in a way none of his team had even considered. Instead of using brute computational force, her method flowed with surprising efficiency, almost organic in its logic. "Excuse me," James said softly, not wanting to scare her. "Sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help noticing your work. Are you creating a supply chain optimization model?" Zoe blinked, startled to see the sharply dressed customer from table 12 standing in the kitchen entrance. She had noticed him earlier. He had that intense, analytical gaze she'd seen from professors, except his expression held curiosity instead of judgment. "Oh, I'm sorry if I ruined your meal," she said quickly, reaching to close her laptop. "I was just working on something for myself during break." "Please, don't close it," James said gently. "I'm actually very interested in what you've built. I'm James Mitchell. I run a tech company, and my team has been grappling with a nearly identical issue. Your approach looks groundbreaking." Zoe hesitated, her fingers suspended over the keyboard. Years of serving tables had trained her to sense people's intentions. This man didn't seem like he was making small talk. He seemed sincerely fascinated. "I call it FlowSync," she said softly. "It identifies supply chain bottlenecks by analyzing micropatterns that most systems overlook." "The micro-delays between decision points," James murmured, leaning closer. "You're modeling the system like a living, self-adjusting ecosystem rather than a rigid machine." "Exactly," Zoe brightened. "Watching the kitchen helped me realize it. Our best nights aren't about gadgets. They're about anticipation. McGill prepping early, servers adjusting automatically, everyone reading subtle cues. Traditional logistics software ignores that nuance." But as she spoke, uncertainty crept in. "Though it probably doesn't matter. I've sent this to so many companies. No one wants ideas from a waitress with a community college degree." James felt something inside him fracture. It was the innovative mind his company urgently needed dismissed before anyone even bothered looking. The irony stung. His own company had probably rejected her resume too, automatically filtered out by hiring systems that valued prestigious institutions over demonstrated ability. "McGill, could you cover my last 2 tables?" Zoe called out, sensing that this conversation was important. "Of course, Mia," the chef replied warmly. "Take all the time you need. If this moment has moved you, tap the like button." Stories like this prove brilliance is everywhere, waiting for recognition. As James pulled up a chair next to her improvised workstation, he realized they were about to begin a discussion that might reshape both of their futures. But first, he needed to help her understand the worth of her ideas. Even if the world had failed to acknowledge them, Zoe walked James through more of her FlowSync system, growing more confident as she spoke about her passion project. For 20 minutes, they talked supply chain theory like longtime colleagues. James scribbled notes on concepts his highly trained engineers had never considered. "This is incredible," James finally said. "Zoe, I need to be upfront with you. My company has been wrestling with this exact issue for months. We've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. Our best minds have worked around the clock, and we're still nowhere close to what you've already built." Her smile faded as harsh reality returned. "But I'm no one," she murmured. "I wait tables. I can't even get past automated screening for entry-level tech positions." "That's exactly what's wrong with the industry," James said, his voice heavy. "We've erected these artificial walls that have nothing to do with actual ability. I've founded Technova to innovate, but at some point I ended up hiring just like everyone else. My mom worked 3 jobs to help me finish school," Zoe said quietly. "I thought my degree would give me a chance. Instead, I learned that a computer science diploma from City Community College doesn't impress anyone. So I've been teaching myself, coding late at night, hoping someone would eventually give me a shot." Her pain hit James harder than any financial loss ever had. He thought of his own path, how he'd been given mentorship, opportunities funding all because he came from the right environment. Meanwhile, Zoe had built superior solutions while pulling 60-hour weeks to afford rent. I've been thinking about giving up, she admitted. Maybe some dreams just aren't meant for people like me. Don't you dare, James said firmly. What you've created could completely transform logistics. The issue isn't your ability to system blind to the genius right forward in front of it. But even as he spoke, James knew the obstacles ahead. How would he convince his board, his investors, his entire organization to embrace the work of someone they'd never taken seriously? His phone buzzed again, more urgent. Reminders about the Morrison deadline. The corporate world wanted solutions, not inspiring stories about undiscovered talent. Listen, James said, finally making a decision that felt bold and necessary. I want to propose something. Let me show your FlowSync system to my team. Let me present it to our biggest client. But I need you to trust me and take a leap. Zoe searched his face for dishonesty. Years of reading customers had given her a sixth sense for false promises. But James's expression held something different: respect, excitement, and an unmistakable resolve. Has anyone ever believed in you at a moment when you almost gave up? Share with us below. What exactly are you suggesting? Zoe asked, her heart pounding. I want to hire you as the lead consultant for the Morrison project, James said. Full consultant, pay complete credit for your work, and if FlowSync performs as I believe it will, I'd like to discuss a long-term role developing next-gen solutions for Technova. Zoe's hand shook slightly as she absorbed his words. But your team, your board, they'll never accept a solution created by a waitress. Then they'll learn the consequences of judging ability by the wrong standards, James replied. I didn't build a billion-dollar company by avoiding risk. My best decisions were the ones others thought were impossible. Over the following hour, James watched in awe as Zoe guided him through the full architecture of FlowSync. Her system didn't merely resolve Technova's problem, it reinvented how logistics could be approached. Instead of relying solely on historical data, it used real-time microsignals to predict disruptions before they cascaded. The breakthrough had come from studying the restaurant's workflow, how Miguel didn't simply follow instructions but constantly adjusted based on cues. FlowSync behaved the same way, but on a global scale. James called Patricia, described the late hour. You're going to think I've lost my mind, he said. But we've found the Morrison solution, and it's brilliant, James. It's almost midnight. Whatever consultant you found can wait. No, it can't. Clear tomorrow afternoon. I want to present FlowSync to Morrison as scheduled, but with a brand new strategy. While James arranged urgent meetings and prepared to integrate Zoe's work into Technova's proposal, Zoe felt her life spinning into a new direction. 3 hours earlier, she had been delivering dessert to table 12. Now she watched a billionaire CEO pivot his most important client project around her code. Are you sure about this? She asked as James coordinated with engineers over conference call. You're risking everything on someone you met tonight. James paused and looked at her. Zoe, in 20 years, I've never seen anything as refined as your work, but even more than that, I've never met anyone who understood this problem so deeply. The next morning, James entered Technova's headquarters with Zoe beside him, fully aware that they were about to challenge everything the company believed about expertise. The executive team gathered, confusion and skepticism coloring their expressions as James introduced their newest consultant. If you've enjoyed this journey so far, remember to subscribe for more uplifting stories of hidden brilliance. But as Zoe began demonstrating FlowSync to the engineering team, the atmosphere shifted almost instantly. Doubt melted into excitement as seasoned developers recognized the ingenious logic behind her algorithms. The real question now was whether this breakthrough could save the Morrison contract and reshape Technova's entire talent strategy. 3 days later, the Morrison presentation was held in Technova's largest conference room. Zoe stood before executives from both companies, her community college diploma tucked in her folder, feeling both insignificant and revolutionary at the same time. As she showcased FlowSync, something remarkable happened. Credentials disappeared from the conversation. Only the solution mattered. This is extraordinary, Morrison's CEO said after her demonstration. Our projections indicate a 40% efficiency improvement. How soon can we deploy this? James watched with satisfaction as his board shifted from skepticism to EW. FlowSync didn't merely solve Morrison's problem, it opened doors they hadn't even imagined. Within 2 hours, Technova secured the $20 million contract and began discussions about implementing FlowSync across Morrison's entire global network. But the real transformation unfolded over the next several weeks. Zoe officially became Director of Innovative Solutions and launched a new initiative to uncover overlooked talent across industries. James restructured hiring, partnering with community colleges and evaluating applicants based on actual skill rather than pedigree. You know what's funny? Zoe remarked one evening as she and James worked late. I used to believe success meant convincing people to see me differently. Turns out, it meant finding people who already could. Miguel visited the company a month later, bursting with pride as Zoe showed him her new office. I always knew you were meant for more than our Kitsian, he said, but I never imagined this. The Kitsian taught me everything, Zoe replied. How to recognize patterns, anticipate needs, manage pressure, coordinate teams. Which just took someone willing to see that experience as valuable. 6 months later, FlowSync was in use across 12 major companies, and Zoe's team included others who'd been undervalued, like a former retail worker who redesigned customer forecasting tools, a taxi driver who optimized traffic systems, and a retired teacher who developed communication protocols that boosted team efficiency significantly. James frequently thought about that night at the Garden Terrace, how simple curiosity had led to monumental change. Technova's stock had doubled, but even more importantly, the company had rediscovered that innovation thrives when talent is sought in unconventional places. Now, Technova regularly collaborates with restaurants, vocational schools, and community centers, acknowledging that problem-solving doesn't only come from experts and labs, it emerges everywhere. Zoe's journey sparked widespread industry reform, inspiring other tech firms to expand their search for talent. On quiet evenings, Zoe still returned to the Garden Terrace not as a waitress, but as a way to stay connected to where her story had begun. She often sat with Miguel while he prepped for the next day, coding as the familiar kitchen rhythms continued to inspire new ideas. It was proof that insight and creativity could come from the most unexpected corners of life. Every problem has a solution, Zoe would remind new hires at Tech. Sometimes, it just takes someone with a different angle to see it. If this story touched you, please like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more inspiring tales of unseen talent and unexpected discovery. And always, remember, extraordinary potential exists everywhere. All it takes is someone willing to notice.